Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Andrew Wells from the Simplified Integration Podcast. It's great to have you here. You're on episode 1 of 1. Don't be a lemming, why integration fails so many doctors. Leonardo da Vinci once said that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, and I agree. You see, the problem with the way that most consulting groups approach medical integration is anything but simple. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's expensive, it's complicated, and quite frankly, it's exhausting. Enough is enough. There are far too many amazing integrated clinics that are struggling. Well, I'm on a mission to change that. What I've come to find from over 5 years working with integrated practices is that simplicity really is the secret. The old saying of less is more is true. Through a streamlined approach, I was able to create multiple successful 7-figure integrated clinics, and now I'm going to show you how you can do the same. Join me as I share with you the secrets to successful medical integration and practice growth. Join me on a journey to greater sophistication through innovation. I'm Dr. Andrew Wells, and welcome to the Simplified Integration Podcast. All right, Doc, so welcome to episode 1. This is actually part of a mini-series, a 5-part mini-series called the 7-Figure Shortcut. So this is kind of like a series within a series. And the reason I wanted to make this 5-part series is because I wanted to give doctors not only a background on what they should avoid and the common mistakes that chiropractors make, but I also wanted to provide you with an amazing amount of content that you can use today to start having wins. And not just content that you can use, but most doctors when they have a vision for what their practice looks like, they don't right away jump into that practice model without doing research, without asking questions, without going through this like battle in your head on, is this good for my practice? Is it good for my business? Is it good for my patients? So I want you to learn from my background. I've been doing integration now for 5 years. I've helped dozens of doctors, have opened several successful businesses. And so I've had all the failures. I've also had a lot of successes. And when I'm on this podcast, this is really a platform for me to be very real, very transparent, very upfront with you, because I'm not here to hide anything, because my past is not perfect. And I want to use my past so that you guys don't make the same mistakes. And, we've had, so for as much success as we've had, we've also had some pretty miserable failures. And that's the whole concept and idea of this podcast. So let me dive right in. And I want to give you a background on how integration crept into my life. Now, my wife and I, we found the concept of integration really exciting and really sexy. And we were 2 years into practice, and my wife and I we started a practice from scratch, and we were working really, really hard to make that thing go. And so we grew pretty quickly. We were, anywhere from a 250 to 350 a week office, which I think in 2 years was pretty good. And to get there, we had to do tons of screenings. We did tons of talks. If there was an opportunity to talk about chiropractic somewhere in my community, I was there. That means I was there in my lunch breaks, in the evenings, on the weekends. We typically worked at bare minimum, a 6 to 6.5 day work week, because we were just putting so much effort behind opening our practice and getting it off the ground. And it went really well. And 2 years into that, these thoughts started creeping in my head. I'm like, can I really maintain this level of effort for the next 30 years of practice? And I don't know if you're listening to this, if you've ever had that thought, like, can I really sustain, do I really want to be doing this when I'm 50, 60, maybe even 70 years old? Like, I don't know if I can do that. And at that time, a friend of mine who had, I didn't know this, but he had integrated about a year before we talked. And he approached me and said, "Hey, Andrew, looks like you're doing well in practice. I don't know if you've ever heard of integration, but I found this practice model and it's fantastic. Like, it's really great. I think you'd be interested in it." So it was my friend who was also a consultant, introduced me to this idea. And I thought, like, man, this sounded actually like a really good idea, because the way he presented it was this. Integration is great because instead of relying on chiropractic insurance reimbursement. So by the way, I'm in a state where we get barely any chiropractic reimbursement from insurance. And so we were like an 85, 90% cash practice at the time. And he said, instead of using chiropractic insurance, you can start using their medical insurance benefits. So what that means, it's a lower deductible, it's a lower copay, it's a lower cost per patient, but In return, you're getting much higher insurance reimbursement because you're billing for medical services. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. And he said, by the way, on top of that is you're positioning your office as a medical office, not just a chiropractic office. And I don't mean that's like an insult to chiropractors, but you know what I mean? Like if you look at the hierarchy of reputation and esteem and integrity and whatever you want to call it, if you ask like anyone on the street, if you go to the gas station or the grocery store, like who do you trust and respect more, a medical doctor or a chiropractor? I don't know but most people would say, yeah, I trust a medical doctor more than a chiropractor. As sad as that sounds, like I know it's a lot of BS, but that's really where we are in our culture. And he goes, so when you position yourself as a medical office, when you're integrated, you get rid of a lot of that, like that preconceived notion of what chiropractic is and what it isn't. So you're positioning yourself as a more valuable office when you integrate. And I thought like that, okay, that made a lot of sense. And also he said, all right, so you got those two things. You have higher reimbursement, you have better authority in your practice, but you also have a bunch of other things that you can bill for. So not just adjustment and rehab, you can bill for, trigger point injections and durable medical equipment and ultrasound guided injections and stem cell therapy and like there's NCV tests. There's all these different things that you can now tap into as an integrated office. And I remember thinking like, yeah, that's kind of cool from a business standpoint, but that was the first time. And I remember thinking this, I'm like, yeah, but that's not chiropractic. And something like hit me here. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to open that door, right? Like I almost felt like even thinking about it was kind of selling out my practice and my patients and my philosophy on chiropractic. So this was the argument in my head. I can stay chiropractic and do what I'm doing, which I was doing relatively successfully, and do that for the next 30 years. Or my other option was I can integrate, and the integration would be I make more money, I have more time. And the only bad thing was like, I feel like I'm kind of selling my soul a little bit. And I don't know if that resonates with anybody listening, but that's how I felt at the time. And I really, really didn't want to be like, look back 20 years from now and feel like I remain kind of this mom and pop shop. Like I didn't reach my full potential. And that was like the turning point in my mind. Like, okay, I need to do integration. And so this little door, I felt like this little door opened up inside me that I just kind of opened up Pandora's box. I had the feeling, I didn't know why I felt that way, but I just felt like this could go wrong if I let it go wrong. But I was determined to make it go the right way and to serve my patients the best way possible, and also to grow and expand my practice for financial reasons, to be honest. And so we integrated our practice, and we hired a consultant, and he told me right out of the gate, this is going to be hard. And I really appreciated his honesty because it was really hard. And he said it's going to take anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 to get this thing started. So I had this chunk of money saved up for integration. And I said, okay, if it's going to take $70,000 to $100,000 to get started, I better have some cushion in case things go wrong. So I had about $200,000. I doubled that number. Worst case scenario, I had $200K saved up in a bank account to make this new integrated model go smoothly. So we started the process, we integrated, and I thought it was going to take about 3 to 6 months to get credentialed. And this is important because if you're not credentialed with Blue Cross Blue Shield and United and Medicare, you're screwed because you've now introduced this really like high overhead model. And if you don't have any insurance checks coming in, like you're going to run out of money pretty quickly. And that is exactly what happened to us. So we integrated and we were waiting for credentialing. Month 1 goes by, month 2 goes by. Month 3, 4, 5, 6 months go by, and we're waiting and waiting and waiting for credentialing to happen, and we heard crickets. And this was like, my wife and I would be waiting for the mailman to show up with insurance checks and like calling Blue Cross Blue Shield, like where are we in the process? And they had no answers for us. And then we were this close to running out of money. Like we wiped through our entire bank account. That $200K was gone in a really short amount of time. And we're like, what are we going to do? Like we almost shut down the whole operation. And then finally it was answered prayer. We finally got credentialed. So insurance money started coming in. So that was a huge relief. I think I have like 5 gray hairs, I think, just from that moment alone. And then the real work started. So when you integrate, if you're not aware, if you've ever been to an integrated office, you have to hire a medical doctor, nurse practitioner. We hired like 3 more staff members just to run these new therapies. And so all of a sudden our staff increased, our patient volume increased, our care plans became a lot more complicated. And we were like, so the very thing that we were trying to do in create like a stable financial business model to have some practice freedom and to make more money and to sort of free ourselves from like the day-to-day grind became a lot more complicated. So we were told up front, this is going to be like a turnkey system, just get it up and running. It's going to be successful. But we actually found that our life was a lot simpler when we just did chiropractic. Not only was it a lot simpler, it was actually a lot more profitable. Now there were times where sure we made a lot of money in integration, but there were also times when we didn't make a lot of money in integration. So about 2 years into the process, we're cranking for one of the busiest integrated offices in the country. We started to get letters from Blue Cross Blue Shield saying, hey, you're doing too many trigger point injections. It's abnormal for your office in your area to be doing that many trigger point injections. Same thing for durable medical equipment. Same thing for NCV tests. So the big insurance companies started saying, hey, we're paying these guys way too much money for what they're doing. And they started slashing our reimbursement. And in some cases, they just cut reimbursement completely. So what went from a pretty lucrative business model, all of a sudden, completely out of our control, we lost a lot of that reimbursement. So imagine this, you go from, our overhead, by the way, was $80,000 to $100,000 per month. So every month we were shelling out tons of money, but our revenue was really high as well. But all of a sudden, our revenue started dropping until a point where we were breaking even, and then we started losing money in integration. And the problem, it's not because we had bad marketing or we were bad business people or bad managers. The problem was you have these big insurance companies who are controlling the game. We are 100% insurance dependent, and that's not a good business model to be in because you have no control over that. And so what are we going to do? We're going to fight Blue Cross and Blue Shield and fight United Healthcare. You're not going to win that battle. So I realized like we were just in a losing game, and it was only a matter of time before we became completely irrelevant. And that took a while for me to sink in. Like I didn't want to let go of that because we were by all means successful, but I knew intuitively that was going away, and logically, I just didn't know what else to do. And we found ourselves stuck in this really complicated, very expensive, overwhelming, exhausting business model. So this was this huge ride that we took with integration. And I remember having this conversation with my wife, like, should we just quit this? And like, we didn't know what else to do. We didn't want to go back to chiropractic only because that kind of left us in the same position, but we felt stuck. We didn't know where to go. And I think a lot of doctors, I've talked to so many doctors who are in this exact same position. They started integration for the same reasons I did. They wanted to help more patients, wanted to make more money, wanted to feel like they were working on their business and not in their business. And they end up, no fault of their own, just as, being in the insurance model, being a victim of medical integration. And there's a huge issue right now, and this really, really bothers me, is you have these like big management companies who are still 100% promoting that old business model. And I will argue, this was a great business model 5 and 10 years ago, and you can find like there are so many docs who made millions of dollars doing this and helped a lot of people, but that business model is dead. And this is happening in chiropractic, this is happening in integrated offices, this is also happening in the MD world. Ask your primary care physician if they're making the same amount of money today as they were 10 years ago. It's just, this is nationwide. And as healthcare changes more and more and more, and as insurance companies have a stronger control over this industry, it's the doctors who suffer. And so it really bothers me when management companies are still selling this dream. The dream is dead. And there are so many, I've talked to so many doctors that are like, yep, you nailed it on the head. I wish someone had told me that before. And this is why we're doing this podcast, is to show that there are two sides of that story. There's the good side and the bad side. And so as we kind of close up this podcast, there was a moment in time when we were going through this that completely changed my life. And as all this was happening in our offices, it was actually the day after Thanksgiving. We woke up, it was Black Friday. I got in our car with my family, my 2 little boys and wife, and we were going to like a holiday type event. And I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden, bam, we got smashed head on going 40 miles an hour. I broke my neck, broke my shoulder, collapsed lung, broken sternum. All of a sudden, like this, my life came to a complete halt. Like everything stopped. And I'm sitting I remember waking up in the hospital and not really knowing what happened. And I remember my friend said, "Oh yeah, someone died in the accident. Like, you're lucky to be alive." I had no idea what was going on. My family was okay, thank God. But as I was waking up and recovering and realized what the damage was, all of a sudden it kind of sunk in as I'm thinking about our practice. Like, holy cow, what the heck is going to happen to our practice? And I'm like, sure, 100%, like we've got to close up shop because I can't run it. My wife can't run it. And I'm looking at 6 months of recovery, right? With a neck brace, the whole bit. And I'm like, oh, we're totally screwed. And you know how, like, I knew, like, through prayer and there were people praying for us and kind of building me up during that really dark time. And I still get emotional talking about it now. And I remember thinking, like, something good is going to come out of this. Like, I know this is happening for a reason. I have total faith that, like, God put me here for a reason. Something good is going to come out of this. And I just knew it. I knew it. And something really good did come out of it. And it's just, it's amazing where sometimes you're forced to sit back and do nothing and not be able to work and just kind of sit in your thoughts. I haven't done that in a long, long time, but I was forced to do that. And, it's funny that you get these ideas and you get these, like, really, things become really clear. And a lot of things became really clear. It became clear that I was on a path that wasn't sustainable. My family was not better off having integrated. I wasn't better off. My family, my wife wasn't better off. And it was time for a change. And so on the next, so I'm going to leave you hanging a little bit here. I don't want to tell you exactly what that aha moment was, but I'm going to share that with you. But I just want you to think about that. So if you're considering integration, and you have some pause about starting that, there's good reason for that. And so, so in wrapping this up, in the next episode, I'm going to tell you exactly what that aha moment was. It's a moment that saved my practice life, made life a lot easier for me, for my patients, for my family, and completely changed everything. And I'm, looking back at it, I'm almost glad that all that bad stuff happened because it led me to finding that discovery. And so I'm really excited to share that with you. And we're going to share that on the next episode. So docs, thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this valuable. I hope you can learn from my story and that you find benefit from it. So I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Till then, bye-bye. Hey, innovators. Thanks for listening to the Simplified Integration Podcast. The fact that you're listening tells me that you're like me, someone who loves simplicity. And the truth is, those who embrace simplicity are some of the greatest innovators. So I hope you got a ton of value from what we covered on today's episode. Be sure to subscribe and share with other docs that you feel could benefit from greater sophistication through simplification and innovation. If you've got specific questions that you'd like answered on this podcast, or you've got specific topics that you'd like me to discuss, just shoot me an email at info@integrationsecrets.com. That's info@integrationsecrets.com.